Vladimir Putin is the biggest beneficiary of all of this attack against Israel, because it has distracted everybody from attention on Ukraine.
Ben, if I can ask you about the airstrikes by the US on what is being described as Iran-linked sites in Syria, in eastern Syria. What is this all about, do you think? And the Defence Secretary, Lloyd Austin, saying it's done in self-defence. What does that mean? What should we read into this?
Well, of course, I actually think these are overdue. There have been sporadic attacks against U.S. forces in the region now for several weeks, and several American soldiers have been injured. And those American soldiers are there as part of countering ISIS. And so the Department of Defense decided it was finally time to strike back, to send a message that Iran should not be launching strikes against American soldiers.
And how do you gauge sending a message versus inflaming tension and simply provoking further responses that would escalate the conflict?
Well, there's public rhetoric, and then there's official communication. So I would expect that there's a lot of communication going on parallel, direct to Tehran, telling them, that they do not want to risk U.S. strikes against Iranian oil facilities or their ports, things that could really hurt. So these are actually, I think the way Secretary Austin described it, a smart way to do this, to send a message, to remind them that we're not just going to sit back and let them hit American troops that are doing something that is completely unrelated to what is happening in Israel. So I think this is, it's deterrence, actually.
Should we consider some of the other sort of regional actors and indeed international actors that are, in play here, as it were? And I want to actually start with Russia. Reports this morning that Vladimir Putin has sort of concluded a meeting with Hamas and a representative from Iran, the deputy foreign minister of Iran, in Moscow yesterday. There's suggestions that a Hamas representative in Moscow said that Israeli hostages being held in Gaza cannot be freed until a ceasefire, notably, note that language, is agreed. But there are warnings of an axis of terror as Iranian and Hamas officials hold talks in Russia. What do you make of this, Ben? What is there to gain for Vladimir Putin here?
Well, actually, Vladimir Putin is the biggest beneficiary of all of this attack against Israel, because it has distracted everybody from attention on Ukraine. Even some resources are being diverted. So I don't think that this is a coincidence. I think this has been in the works for quite some time. Russia's most important ally is Iran, not China, and they have been working together. I don't think there's a piece of paper that says, directly from Vladimir Putin to the Ayatollah saying, please attack Israel on this date. But the idea of causing as many problems and distractions for the West is exactly what I would expect the Kremlin to be doing. So this meeting is this is not a meeting that was just called. This is something that I think is part of a longer-term effort.
How interesting. Okay. As we continue then our sort of our look at some of the other countries, other nations, other forces really here, should we consider Hezbollah, the military force in Lebanon, which has limited its fighting with Israel, but some have speculated that if Israel moved ground troops into Gaza, then that might provoke some sort of response from Hezbollah as well. I suppose what we're getting here, Ben, is a picture of how sensitive this is, because if one nation, one actor pushes in one direction, it could provoke a response from all sorts of other directions.
So, excellent point, but I don't think it's provocation. I think this is the overall concept by Russia and Iran to put as much pressure on us, all of us, including the Israelis, but on the West, to prevent us from being able to help Ukraine defeat Russia. So I think my president, a couple of weeks ago when he spoke to the nation, he talked about there's a reason that we want to combine the aid to Israel and the aid to Ukraine, as well as to Taiwan, is because these are all parts of a greater whole. And the West has got to be able to help Ukraine defeat Russia, which will then undermine Iran's ability to support Hamas and willingness to support Hamas and Hezbollah against Israel. And, of course, in the background, China is watching the entire thing to see if we are serious about defending those values that we say are important, such as freedom of navigation, respect for sovereignty, respect for human rights. This is all part of the West needing to get organized and understand the threats that are coming at us from different directions.